Let's look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, we've talked a lot over the last couple of months about the best players in the draft, the best players for the Detroit Lions, who we want to see be added to this Detroit Lions offense or to this Detroit Lions defense. But one thing that I think it's overshadowed a lot is the fit, is the culture fit, is the scheme fit, is just the personality fit within this team. Are they a gritty football player? Are they willing to do the dirty work? Are they willing to do the things that don't get recognized but impact the game tremendously? Those are all factors that really do need to be considered when evaluating a prospect for the Detroit Lions. And if we've learned anything over the last 2 years, Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell value fit, they value scheme fit, they value personality fit, and they value that immeasurable toughness and grit aspect of a player more than anything. They have sacrificed talent throughout the draft for culture fits multiple times over the last 2 years. Some of the times it's certainly worked out, and some of the times it hasn't worked out. Some of the times they've passed on better prospects in turn for better culture fits. And I think that this is something that is really being undervalued by people that are mocking players to the Detroit Lions. So today, I want to talk about the best culture fits. I want to talk about the players that fit the city, that fit the team, that fit the coaching staff, and fit the mantra of the Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes-led gritty Detroit Lions. So, with all that being said, let's get into the top 5 fits for the Detroit Lions going into the 2023 NFL Draft. Now, starting off, I do not think there is a better fit in this class than Devon Witherspoon. I think Devon Witherspoon is the perfect player for this Detroit Lions team. Didn't measure in as well as a lot of people thought he was going to at the NFL Combine, but was targeted 62 times last year, allowed 22 receptions for 206 yards, 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 14 passes defended, and a 25 QBR when targeted by quarterbacks. Meaning if they spiked the ball or overthrew it out of bounds every time they targeted Devon Witherspoon, they would have had a better QBR and a better passer rating than what they had when what actually happened. He allowed a single yard in press man coverage of 125 snaps of press man coverage last year. He allowed a single receiving yard. He's a big hitter. He has great ball skills. He is very fluid in transition. He is just an amazing, amazing prospect. Now, he is a little undersized, only 5'11", but I said does have some pretty decently sized arms. Didn't measure in as well as a lot of people would have thought, but again, the combine should not sway your opinion on these prospects, right? Yes, they might not have measured in the way you thought that they were, but they're not going to shrink or grow from what they were on the tape, right? Devon Witherspoon on his tape is the same thing he measured in at the combine, meaning he's going to play the exact same way. Now, there are some concerns about durability issues with his weight and size, but again, it was not a problem in college, so you can't fault it for being a problem in the NFL. He has the ball skills, he has the grit. He's currently dealing with a hamstring injury, which is a little bit concerning, but as far as the player, as far as the guy you're getting at the 6th overall pick, I think that Devon Witherspoon is the perfect player for the Detroit Lions, and I would almost pencil him in immediately for the 6th overall pick if I was Detroit. Moving on to number 2, I think Lucas Van Ness is another great culture kind of player. As I said yesterday, reminds me a lot of Aiden Hutchinson, a player that just works so incredibly hard. As I mentioned yesterday, if they both rushed the passer the same amount in their final year at college, Lucas Van Ness would have outperformed Aiden Hutchinson by 3.5 sacks, having 17.5 on the year if he were not a rotational backup for the Iowa Hawkeyes. He was the best player on the Hawkeyes defense, 6'5", 272, elite speed grade, great agility grade, elite production. I think, again, the work ethic, the grittiness, the being a backup and being a rotational player and not complaining despite very clearly being the best player on the Iowa defense last year, I think speaks volume about his character, speaks volume about his work ethic, and I think he is one of, again, the best fits, the best culture fits for the Detroit Lions moving forward into the draft. And I think if the Lions walk out with Devon Witherspoon and Lucas Van Ness, not only is it a great talent pairing, not only is it a great duo as far as getting positions of need, getting needful players and getting great players to do the things you need most, but they're both the best culture fits that could go in the first round. Now, another potential first-round prospect that does fit the Detroit Lions very well is Brian Branch. Haven't talked about Brian Branch a whole lot, but is graded out as a first-round, technically slot DB, but also potential safety from Alabama. He is a player that had 14 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 17 passes defended, while receiving an 89.5 PFF grade. He's versatile, has elite instincts, does everything you'd ever want in the secondary, and again, just has that mentality. For lack of a better term, he has that dog in him. He is going to tackle, he is going to run, he is going to play every single down like it is the last down that he is going to get to play football in his entire life. And those are the players that the Detroit Lions love. Those are the players that Dan Campbell cannot wait to coach. So again, another first-round option potentially being Brian Branch, the defensive back from Alabama. The Lions do need cornerback help. They do need safety help. They do need a great slot cornerback or a good nickel defender, all three of which they are currently lacking either at depth or talent at the position. Brian Branch can fill all of those needs and be really good at all of those things. Now, I wouldn't play Brian Branch on the boundary at cornerback, but if you're talking a nickel defender, you're talking about a high safety with range and ball skills and the ability to just take the football away. You're talking about a versatile defender with elite traits and elite instincts. Brian Branch is a great fit for the Detroit Lions. I think the mentality really sets him above some of the other safeties in this class, and I think he is going to be a very high pick because of it. Now, the fourth player that we're going to talk about today is Osiris Torrance, another player from yesterday's video, but again, just has that nasty mentality, right? 6'5", 347 pounds. I mean, he is just a monster in the run game. He is somebody that is going to maul you. He is somebody that will not let the pass rush get around him, had allowed 0 sacks at Florida, has a nasty mentality, is, in my opinion, very, very similar to Penei Sewell when he was coming out of Oregon, not necessarily from the refinement standpoint, not necessarily from the talent standpoint, but being just these big, hulking offensive lineman that will never let his quarterback be touched, is nasty in the run game, is nasty in the pass game, will go defend his quarterback with everything that he has every single play. And again, I think just that dream combination of having those three players run blocking for you, being Frank Ragnow, Osiris Torrance, and Penei Sewell, run blocking for a guy like DeAndre Swift or a guy like Jamal Williams or even anybody else really in the NFL would be just an absolute dream to watch, because you're talking 4th and goal, 3rd and goal, you're talking 3rd down and short, you're talking 4th down and 1, right? Need to convert. You run behind those three, and probably 10 times out of 10, barring some crazy circumstance, you are going to score a touchdown or get a first down every single time, because there is no duo on defense in the NFL that can move those three backwards, right? There is no defensive lineman in the NFL or two or pair of defensive linemen in the NFL that can push that trio back. They're too big, they're too strong, they're too nasty, and they will get the job done every single time. I think the mentality, I think that the, just overall grit that these players have showed is something that the Detroit Lions will very much value. And again, the Lions at the NFL draft mentioned that there were 40 players that they interviewed. About 4 of them had the it factor that Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell like to talk about. I think these are the players that they could be talking about, right? Lucas Van Ness, Devon Witherspoon, Brian Branch, Osiris Torrance, and the last player I want to talk about is Darnell Washington, the tight end from Georgia. Now, I am not advocating that the Detroit Lions draft a tight end. In fact, I am very much against the Detroit Lions drafting a tight end unless it is a day 3 player with some receiving and blocking upsides. But looking at just the player in a vacuum, he is a phenomenal fit and scheme fit for the Detroit Lions. Having 452 receiving yards and averaging 16 yards per reception, being an instant upgrade at the tight end position, being an instant upgrade at the blocking tight end position is something I think the Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell really value in a tight end, is that blocking ability. He is 6'7". He is an extreme red zone threat. He has big hands and catches with his hands, does not catch with his body. He does get his hands on the football, high points the ball, and takes the football away from defenders. He is an elite run blocker, I think the best run blocking tight end in this class, and would be such a dynamic weapon for the Detroit Lions offense. I think mostly the fact that he's a 6'7" tight end that run blocks like an offensive lineman should tell you everything you need to know about why Dan Campbell would want this guy on the roster. Again, I don't think it's very likely. I think that Darnell Washington will go in the first round, and if the Lions take a first round tight end, even if it is Darnell Washington, I would be very frustrated at that pick. But just as far as a scheme fit and the player and the talent in a vacuum, Darnell Washington is a top 5 fit for this team and would be a instant upgrade and culture fit for this football team. So with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Those are my top 5 culture fits, top 5 scheme fits for the Detroit Lions going into the 2023 draft. Let me know if I missed anybody. Let me know if you know anybody deeper down the board that could potentially be a culture fit, could potentially be a Dan Campbell guy. Very curious what you guys think. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.